and welcome. I'm Deb Calvert. This is the People First Productivity Solutions channel on Bright Talk. For those who are new to Bright Talk, be sure and look just under the video. I want you to notice that there are attachments there. That's where all the bonus goodies live, and you're welcome to take as many of those as you like. I think the first one that you'll see is a PDF of the slides that I'll be using today, so feel free to download that as you're taking notes. You know, today we're talking about language, because language is one of the most powerful tools that humans use to distinguish ourselves one from another. Language matters. Now, as leaders, our words have some extra weight, some gravity to them. And so we have to think not just about what we say, that's a whole different session, but how we say it. And the language of leaders, the reason that I chose this topic today is because so often as an executive coach, this question comes up. People wonder, what is it that I need to know to modify how I say what I say? So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how leaders use language not just as a tool to describe the world that already exists, but how they also use language, their words, to produce a world and a future that wouldn't otherwise exist. And our objective this month is to help you put the power of leadership language to work so that you can inspire others and lead more effectively. Well, I'm really happy that you're here, whether it's live or on demand. And for those who I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, please take a look at those attachments and think about connecting with me on LinkedIn. I'd really enjoy the opportunity to get to know you over there. And as we're working through the session here, I hope that you'll post questions for me. I appreciate your questions at any time, and I will take them as they come, as they make sense in the flow of the presentation. I'll take whatever ones are left at the end, and if for some reason we don't get to all the questions, I promise you that I'll follow up and I'll somehow, some way get an answer back to you. So I appreciate those questions. Now we're talking about the language of leaders and how you can be more impactful, whatever the words you're saying might be, how you can modify them, and how you can use techniques that will make you influential. What I'd like you to do here for a moment is just think about someone you know, someone you would consider to be persuasive, and think about, what is it about that person? What is it that they do that makes them so persuasive? What are some of the techniques that you've observed? Now, we're only going to talk about persuasion for just a moment. It provides good context because, yes, leaders are persuasive. They wouldn't be leaders if people didn't want to follow them, and part of that is persuading people. So I'm going to give you first 9 very, very simple tips to help you speak more persuasively. And then we're going to dive deeper into some additional techniques used by leaders to inspire others and to engage others using nothing but words. So here's the first piece. Just these quick tips about persuasion. These are 9 simple tips for persuasive speaking. And they are relevant. They can be used whether you're speaking to a group or to individuals. You probably are familiar with most of these. I bet you've heard them before. Let me take you down almost to the bottom and talk about one that we don't often talk about, and that is using active versus passive voice. Active voice, that means that it has an action and it has an object, so you know who is doing what, or who has done what, or who is going to do what. It's not masked in something that's vague. So let me give you a couple of examples to try to make that a little bit more sensible. What we're doing here with active voice is trying to get people to visualize and see the action and know exactly where it's coming from. So instead of saying something like, a plan will take shape for us, you see, that's not really giving accountability to anyone. It's acting as if the plan itself could take shape. To make it more active, we would change that to say, together we will create a plan. Now there's some ownership to it. To say something like the employees will be better served by our plan. Well, here again, we're acting as if the plan has some kind of power. It doesn't. Only people have that power. The plan we put together meets the needs of our employees. That makes it more active. All right, and then let's talk about that last bullet point. That last bullet point, again, in business, we often talk about, what's concrete, what's measurable. We talk in the language of business speak and KPIs and measurable objectives. But we forget that somewhere in there, we have to appeal to basic human needs. I think Maslow's pyramid at the bottom, the foundational thing, the one that brings us all together, no matter where we are at what stage of life, we have basic human needs. And that's why these words are so persuasive. These plain, simple words, they have a lot of power. That's why you see them so often in advertising. These words immediately convey that there's a benefit to you. And if I, as a leader, if I'm talking about my own advantages and objectives, or if I'm talking vaguely about the plan, or I'm talking about something that's intangible, it's going to be a lot harder for me to persuade you. But on the other hand, where it's authentic, if I can show you how you can be successful, how you can do something that's easy and yet exciting, if I can help you to feel like it's convenient and you're going to be safe at the same time and accepted, well, I've broken down a lot of barriers. You're going to feel a lot of comfort from those words alone. Now, let me just say here a fine point on this. You don't want to overdo this. This isn't about spin. It's not about trying to manipulate people. What you say has to be authentic, and you would use that list of words where they fit, where they naturally fit. You wouldn't assume that people already understand and know. You'd be weaving those words in because they're reminders to people of the advantages that they could derive if they went along with what you're proposing. Okay, so that was just a very quick little look at persuasion. Let's call that the backbone of the language of leaders, because ultimately that is often the goal. But now I want to take a much deeper look at just a few of the techniques, the proven techniques that leaders use to craft their messages. And I'd like you to play along with me as we take a look at some of these, have some fun with it as we go. The first technique is to use analogies or metaphors. Many leaders use very simple analogies and metaphors to paint a picture. And this is a technique that's been around for centuries. By comparing one thing to another that's more familiar, you make it easier for someone to see themselves within it. So remember, one of those techniques of persuasion is to be able to relate to something familiar. You take what's new, you relate it to something that's already known, and that makes it more comfortable. Now, these are powerful because they also evoke emotions by painting pictures. You see a certain sense of confidence come from steering the ship when the sea is calm. And you certainly see the contrast for why things might be a little more difficult when the sea is not as calm. You can visualize a lion, and you can visualize a lion's roar. And certainly in this Roosevelt quote, you can understand a contrast between dying on our feet and living on our knees. These are word pictures that are being painted and these analogies and metaphors that are being offered. Now, let's talk next about another really powerful technique. And these are declarations. Leaders make declarations that no one else will dare to make. Leaders are willing to share their vision by speaking it in a way that everyone can understand and everyone can see themselves within it. I've given you a few examples on screen. When these declarations were first made, they seemed like fairy tales. But somehow, saying it, declaring it, made these more tangible, more attainable. And people got behind these powerful declarations to bring the leader's words to life. Now, I do want to give you a caution about declarations. You've probably made some in the past that no longer serve you well. So don't let those outdated declarations run your life. Right? You should always be thinking about declarations that define the future, not the present or the past. So think about, what is it that you want to accomplish in the near future, and declare it. It could be as small as, I will lose 5 pounds by the end of March. It's a declaration. Declarations start with the word will. And in the 3 examples that are quotes there, you'll notice that important word will. Not I might, not I'd like to, not I think I could. I will makes it a declaration. Now I'm going to go ahead because I have such a great question here. It goes back to what we were talking about when it comes to persuasion, and everything we're talking about has a little bit to do with persuasion. For those who are familiar with Robert Cialdini's book, this is going to be a question that's easy to translate. Others, I recommend that book. It's called Influence. So he has 6 principles of influence in the book. And I'm not going to be able to talk about all of those, but I'm just going to flash forward to the question. Could they be utilized by a leader to be more persuasive and effective? Most people use that book, Influence, more like a sales tool. But absolutely, I don't shy away from the words sales or selling because I don't fundamentally believe in the stereotypes of selling. And when you liberate yourself from those stereotypes and all those icky behaviors that you associate with selling, then you can think about, well, we all sell things every day. I've got to sell myself on this idea of losing 5 pounds by the end of March. I've got to sell you on the idea of trying some new things to adopt the language of leaders. You might have to sell somebody today on an idea that you have or a small process change you'd like to make. It's influence, it's selling, and yes, it is leadership. Persuading people, helping them to see the future, helping them to understand the benefits of going along with you toward that future. It's all wrapped up together. So great question. That is from Glenn. Thank you very much, Glenn, for the question. Now we're going through some techniques. We looked at persuasive words. We looked at analogy and metaphor, painting a picture with your words, making something unfamiliar a little bit more familiar. And what we're going to talk about next, now that we've covered declarative statements, we're going to talk about something else that leaders do. This one is another one that's really big. It's profound and it's important. We're going to talk about some nuances, though, behind it. And this is the language of leaders in terms of leaders make promises. But leaders don't simply make promises. Instead, they understand how and when to make a promise, and also how to break one. Now, hold the phone. I know that was a big statement. I want to provide a little bit of background here. I do believe, absolutely believe, that making a promise is a profound act. Within each promise lies the possibility and the vulnerability of trust and the hope of a desire that could be fulfilled. And leaders must be responsible for their promises and become skillful at managing negotiations and reactions related to those promises. But the very first thing to know and remember about integrity, which is what we're ultimately talking about, integrity does not mean keeping every promise every time. And I know that sounds like a shocking statement, but let me explain. Circumstances change constantly. No way around it. Life alters our paths, and sometimes we need to realign our promises to allow us to be able to match up with a new current reality. Integrity involves what you say and do when you have no choice left and must break a promise. So let's talk about some guidelines then. Guidelines for breaking a promise. Well, you should acknowledge it. You don't want to be blaming others. You shouldn't be defensive. You shouldn't deny or back away from that original promise. You should explain thoroughly what's going on and empathize with other people's disappointment. And then whatever you do, try very hard. Try to honor the original intent of the promise, even if you can't follow through on the original plan. So, think about this. Think about promises that you might need to revoke or you might need to renegotiate if you're to maintain alignment with the company and integrity with those who are already relying on your word. Nobody said this stuff about leadership and the language of leaders was easy. But your credibility, remember, is one of the cornerstones of leadership. People can't believe any message if they don't believe in the messenger. Your credibility is something that you always have to be mindful of and protective of. When the time comes that you have to break a promise, you still have to maintain your credibility. So you have to honor the intent of that promise, explain the situation, bear the responsibility of modified plans and promises. And before you ever do make promises, make sure that you really mean them. Try to honor the promises and commitments that you make by being deliberate about when you make them, how you make them, and very, very thoughtful about any that you might not be able to continue upholding when circumstances change. All right, a few more techniques for the language of leaders. How you say things matters greatly. Sometimes it's about making requests. You see, leaders, they make requests instead of always issuing commands. Making requests helps any leader to gauge where others stand, and it facilitates a good two-way discussion. Commands, that's one style of leadership. You can do command and control. But what we're talking about, what we know is more effective, is not command and control, it's heart and soul. So requests and two-way discussions are part of that. Now, you shouldn't use request questions like the ones you see on screen. Don't use those manipulatively. They won't be genuine if the person you ask feels compelled to say yes. If it's truly a request, then the other person has the liberty to say no. And leaders shouldn't put people in the awkward position of saying no if the only expectation is that they're going to say yes. If that's the case, don't bother with requests or questions at all. You only use this when there's truly an alternative. Now, in order for a request to be fulfilled, there also should be conversation beyond acceptance, right? So you ask, they do say yes, then you set expectations, you establish the guidelines and the deadlines, make sure there's common understanding, you define what success will look like, and then you remain available, just like with any good delegation, to be someone that people can come to get some help. And when you use requests as a leadership technique, what you're doing is you're empowering other people. You're empowering people as you are showing them how others can be dignified and how they too someday will be able to teach other people along the way, as just like you've been doing. You're modeling something to them. Great comment here in the questions. It's also important to acknowledge and admit mistakes you make and use those as learning opportunities. So with promises made, that can be a powerful tool. I know when I've had to break or modify promises, when I go and explain the situation, I usually have by then reflected on what do I wish I had done differently, what additional information, where did I leap before I looked. And absolutely, if you can be vulnerable about that, it's a teaching opportunity for others, and it demonstrates that you have the humility to continue being open to new learning too. Let's do one more technique. And after we do one more technique, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the weight of your words. This technique is that leaders often use assertions. Now I'm going to give you an example of an assertion. I said just a few slides back that it is okay for leaders to break promises. This expressed a position that I held. I expressed that to you in a way that may have caused an initial reaction, and then I backed up my assertion with some additional information that hopefully made it a little easier to understand. I used that strong assertion to anchor my position so that our discussion went a certain direction. It would have been a very different discussion if I had started off with a different kind of an anchor, if I had started off by saying, leaders should never, ever break a promise. And I did all that on purpose. I did that because I wanted to illustrate this for you. You see, assertions, they are not necessarily factual. They're not necessarily gospel truth. They can be opinions. They might be disproven. Leaders use assertions to assert themselves as much as they use them to assert an idea. By the way, the word assert, I think this is kind of helpful sometimes to get to root words. The word assert means to declare, to position, or to bring attention to. And sometimes leaders, they need to get attention to themselves in order to get attention to an idea. So that's what that's all about. I'll tell you what, if you haven't been watching, underneath the slides, there's a place where I display announcements every once in a while. And I'm displaying a new one right now. It says, which of these tips, the ones I've talked about so far, do you plan to use? Which one have you heard that you might try? Is it analogy and metaphor, declarative statements, promises made, promises kept, promises broken, requests, or assertions? How are you going to be working to use the language of leaders? And although we have a little bit more to talk about, I'd like to pause here and just get you to give me a little feedback in the question box. Of the items you've heard so far, which one of those do you think will be of value for you to use a little more often? See, we all have these. We've all done every single one of these. But I think what's often missing is that we aren't deliberate. We don't think about, I need to assert a certain position here. Or we don't think about the words, I will. Ooh, what's needed here is a declaration that will inspire people. As leaders, because our words do have a lot of weight, they carry some magnitude to them, it is especially important at all times that we be cognizant of that and that we be deliberate, not only in what we say, but in how we say it. So I'm looking for you, those who are listening in live, keep those coming into the question box. Which one of those techniques do you have some interest in exploring a little bit more? Which one do you think you'll use? And if you're someone listening on demand, I always invite you, and I appreciate those who do, correspond with me afterwards, and I'll give you my email address again. I just like to know what's hitting for you, what's working, what's not working, what additional insights that you have. All right, so I want to talk now about the weight of a leader's words in ways that I hope will cause you to be cautious. As you're being deliberate, as you're being very thoughtful about your words, there are some cautions that you also need to take. And one of these is about the pronouncements or the assessments that you put out there. You see, sometimes we're just ourselves, right? I remember when I first went to a corporate role, I was at a Fortune 500 company, and I went from one of the uh, child companies up to the parent company, had a director role, and we'd fly place to place. And it was really puzzling to me at first why people suddenly they changed how they interacted with me. And it took me a little while to realize that when I spoke, it was corporate speaking. It wasn't just Deb anymore. And that was hard to get used to. I want to be just Deb. I just want to be real. But the truth is, the position that you have, the power that you have, the authority changes how people receive what you say. Assessments are the very same way. I'm going to tell you an example here, real example. I do a lot of work in the field, and this happened a few years back, but I was on a factory floor, and I was assessing how the supervisors interacted with members of the crews on that factory floor. And the person who I knew already and who had hired me was the CEO, and he was walking me around the factory floor, introducing me to people, and doing his thing as he did. So here's what happened. He talked about people out loud, everyone could hear him. He talked about people in ways that caused problems that he had no idea were problems. So he said, for example, at one person on one side of the line, "Oh, she's too slow at processing orders. Why are you so slow?" Now, remember, I'm coaching him too, so don't judge him too harshly. But essentially, he put it out for everyone that this one particular person was very, very slow on one end of the line. And as we moved on through the factory, he said something about another person. "She's really effective at processing orders. Look how fast she is." Now, what turned out to be the case is that the person who was very slow on down the line was fixing the mistakes of the person who was very fast, very effective. I had air quotes around the word effective there, very effective at processing orders. The CEO, observing this, right, he didn't realize what he was saying. He didn't even realize what he was seeing, but he put some truths out there that caused others to have perceptions, and not exactly accurate ones, about these two individuals that he called out. So we've got to be careful. When you make statements like these, statements where all the criteria might not be considered, that can be very damaging, not just to the people that you talk about, but here's the deal. This can also be very, very damaging to your credibility. What if you're wrong? What if you don't have all the information? What if you're not close enough to the action to really understand what's going on? What if you're saying something different than what the others who do know more have said differently or have thought differently? So those assessments that you make, well, they may not serve you well. You've got to be really sure you have all the information and that you aren't just making half-baked pronouncements that can cause harm to others and to you. A couple other thoughts here. The language of leaders isn't just verbal. The language of leaders, like anyone's language, also has a lot to do with body language. You know that nonverbal communication can actually ignite gut level emotions and responses in people. Research tells us that acquiring an understanding of body language increases a leader's ability to be successful in collaborating and communicating, even when we're just seeing each other on screen. Nonverbals trigger feelings that cause us to judge others' truthfulness, their trustworthiness, their sincerity, their skill level, their leadership abilities. The way we interpret others' body language can determine who we hang out with, who we date, who we confide in, who we decide to work with, who we vote for, and so much more. And most of that is happening within our subconscious. So we're less analytical than we might otherwise be with those very important decisions. Now, I would like to invite you at home or at your office to try something with me. I'm not going to do it because it'll take me off camera, and when I come back, or if I do it, you'll just see the middle of me instead of my face, and so maybe it's not fair. But I'm going to ask you alone, wherever you are, to give this a try. We're going to experiment with 2 core body language types, and this will help you to improve your body language in any situation where you want to be influential. Okay, so stand up wherever you are, just stand up. And what I would like you to do first is to move your feet a little further apart. Move them so that they are about as far apart as your shoulders are. So your feet, they're spread shoulder width apart. And now I want you to imagine from the top of your head down to that middle point between your feet, all the way vertically up and down your body. We're going to call that the middle point. And I want you to open up from that middle point. So your feet are already apart. Now, spread your arms out and have your hands open. Make large, open-handed gestures away from your body. Hold your shoulders back, tilt your chin up, have your eyes looking out and around you as you have opened up everything. Your whole body is opened up from that center line. And if you're having fun with this, it's exaggerated and it's goofy, but nonetheless, it gives you some energy and it feels good and it's wide open. All right, now, for contrast, I would like you now to fold in around that center line. Put your feet right next to each other. Hunch your shoulders in, fold them, roll them in toward your body. Tuck your chin down. Bring your hands very close in. Your arms are now close to your body, and any gestures that you're now making, they're very, very close to your body. And your eyes, they've dropped down too, and your chin dropped. This is a closed presence instead of an open presence. Now, which one of the two do you think is described as having authority, power, influence, confidence, strength, skill, mastery, charisma, and leadership associated with it? Sure, it's the open posture, and all of that is based on just a rapid assessment of how someone holds their body. So go ahead, have a seat now, relax. We can't judge. We can't influence, I should say, how people judge body language. They're going to do it. It's subconscious. They can't control how they're judging us and our body language either. So the best we can do is work to have the body language that is more favorably judged. And this is often associated with our own confidence or our own preference for introversion or extroversion. People who are introverted more routinely do tend to fold in a bit. People who have an extroverted preference do tend to have a little bit more open body presence from their midline. But you get to decide, no matter what your preferences are, you get to decide what you want to project. And here's some even better news. If you do this just before you enter a meeting, so before your camera's on in a Zoom meeting, if you'll open up your body, if you'll take your feet apart, if you'll put your shoulders back, if you'll lift your chin up, it actually does cause you to feel more confident. There's not just an external perception, there's an internal reception of that too. So it can give you that extra measure of confidence right before you have to present or be on camera. Give it a try, see how it works for you. There's one more technique. It's a two-parter, but they go together, so I'll call it one. One more technique when it comes to the language of leaders, and that is asking questions. Not just those request questions, but I'm talking about questions in a wide varieties of ways here. Leaders, they're effective in leading ultimately because they take people to a new place, but it's a place where those people already want to go. The word leader, leiden, is its root word. It means to guide. And if you're going to guide somebody, chop down the vines that are in their way as you make your way through the jungle, you've got your machete out there. If you're going to guide them through something, it suggests that, first of all, they can't get there by themselves. They need someone to show them the way. It suggests that they trust you, otherwise they're not going to follow you. And they're not going to put in the effort to go to that new place unless there's a reason to. And reasons are personal. So, leaders ask questions because they want to understand why people want to go the places they want to go. What's in it for them? Questions give you an opportunity to demonstrate that you care about others. I mean, we don't ask questions if we don't care. And we want people to know we care so that they can trust us. And because they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. When I look to influence someone or to persuade them or to lead them, and yes, those things are all the same, when I look to operate in that way, it doesn't start with me. It starts with understanding what's of value to the other person. I'd like to have that kind of insight about people so that I can be aligned, not manipulatively, but authentically aligned with how I might be able to help them achieve what they want to achieve. Those questions that I ask, it's better when they're not close-ended. Close-ended ones can be answered with yes, no. They start with helper verbs like can, will, is, are, does, do. Those helper verbs can all be answered with a yes, no. Scientifically, when you phrase a question that way, people will give you a shorter answer and they won't think much about it. But I want to ask questions that really engage people, that draw them out, that give me genuine information, not just pat answers. I want to get acquainted. I want to have a deep level understanding. So I don't use as many yes-no questions. Instead, I use open-ended who, what, where, when, why, how, and which. That's also open-ended. Those are the only questions in the English language where they start a sentence and the sentence ends in a question mark that can't be answered yes, no. So they're pretty powerful. And then command statements are the most powerful of all. Command statements aren't questions. They end with periods, so technically they're not questions, but they do invite information. They get the longest answers, they get the richest answers, and they make people really think before they respond. So these are command statements. Tell me, describe, help me understand, explain. And if you want them to be good, strong command statements, you won't weaken them by tagging on those helper verbs. Don't say, could you tell me about? Don't say, will you help me understand? Leave off those words at the beginning and go with the command statement with the powerful phrasing instead. As you're asking questions, of course, it's only wise to ask questions if you're also going to demonstrate really good, active, empathetic listening. Questions aren't the magic. Dialogue, two-way dialogue, that's receiving as well as sending communication. Active listening is where people really feel heard and where trust really does grow. So you're asking great questions, you're listening, and along the way, you're also confirming that you understood. You weren't listening just to have an opening, just to say whatever it is you already wanted to say. You're listening so that you can genuinely understand, and then you're paraphrasing to make sure you heard what you thought you heard. Here's where we get in trouble on this one. Oftentimes, we hear what we want to hear. We fill in the blanks with what we've understood before. We make assumptions because, well, it's fast and convenient and easy to do that. Our minds think faster than people speak. So paraphrasing gives you an opportunity to confirm what you heard. Here's a good place to use close-ended questions. Hey, what I heard you say is, did I get that right? Did I miss anything? Those little short answers are just fine here because you're giving something back to people. And you're echoing their own words back to them. That makes people feel good. It makes them feel dignified and ennobled because you cared enough to listen and really absorb what they had to say. So these are all techniques for effectively using the language of leaders. These are all really important techniques to be able to paint a picture of the future, to be able to bring people along with you to that place that they want to go, but they can't quite get there on their own. And if they can't even see it, if they can't feel the benefits of being there, if they can't fully understand that exciting new place, well, then you can't expect them to try to follow you. It's too vague. It's too dangerous. It's too scary because it's unknown. All right, so my email is something I posted just a moment ago. Hopefully you caught it. There it is, one last moment. And if you wouldn't mind posting a review for me, I always appreciate those. They help me understand what you liked, what you'd like to see done differently. I really have enjoyed the dialogue here, and I've got a couple more questions to ask. I'm also surveying all the things you're going to take and use. Ooh, analogy and metaphor, several declarations. I love the deliberate use of I will. I'm going to start using that technique. I changed your words, by the way. Whoever wrote that said, I want to begin using that technique. So I changed it so it would be declarative. I will begin using that technique. Promises, requests. But here's a good question with request. But don't requests set you up for the person to say no? Then what do you do? Well, that's why I say only make it a request if there is a true option for them to say no. So let's say I'm working with someone to develop them, and I think it would be valuable for them to attend a senior level meeting. And so I ask them, hey, for your development, would you like to attend this senior level meeting? If I was managing and I needed them to be at that meeting, I would say, I need you to go to that meeting. I wouldn't make it a request. But if they had some hesitance, if they had some fear, if they had some schedule conflict, I want them to be able to say no. And when they say no, I say, okay, help me understand what it will take for you to be able to attend that meeting next time. What are your reservations? What can we be doing to prepare you for that before the next one comes along? So don't use it if you're afraid of the no. That means it's probably not a good situation. No is going to put you in a bad situation. But use it when an alternative would be fine, and when they can truly have the opportunity to say yes or no. When you make requests like that and you allow people to say no, but no is not permanent, right? Oh, what will it take for you to be ready next time? Pretty soon, people will see the nature of your requests as helpful for their development, or as something that is not necessarily a command, but it is a tacit expectation for the future. You're hopeful and you want them to gain what they need to be able to do it. Okay. I love this comment, and I'm going to build on it. So someone wrote, absolutely agree with the owner of listening and questioning. You often hear, I gave him a good talking to, but how often do you hear someone say, I gave him a good listening to? I love that. I think I'm going to steal that. You never hear it, but by the same token, you never hear people after a meeting say, wow, you did a really good job of listening today. Instead, you hear people say, great presentation today. We put a lot of emphasis on the talking and not nearly as much on the listening. Here's a question. Is there a limit for a leader to make promises and not keep them? Oh, absolutely. Thank you for bringing that out. You breaking promises needs to be an exception. And you've got to be very thoughtful before you ever do it. Remember, we said that promises are profound. There's a lot wrapped up in any promise that you ever make. When somebody continually breaks promises, it diminishes their credibility, and pretty soon it's impossible for people to believe in them. So don't set yourself up for that kind of failure. Here's an acronym. Use it as often as you can. The acronym is DWYSIWYD. It stands for do what you say you will do. The same forwards as it is backwards. Do what you say you will do. Follow through on your promises and commitments. Don't make them unless you are planning to keep them. Write them down so you don't forget them. And remember that as a leader, as someone who others are watching, those promises are not throwaways. They're a pretty big deal every single time you utter one. So be really careful. Make promises that you'll keep. And in those rare situations when you have to break a promise, do it with integrity. Explain why you're doing it. And make sure that people see it as something that's unusual, not the norm. All right, I'm Deb Calvert. I appreciate you being here with me today. You're going to email me. You're going to link in with me. You're going to take the attachments and you're going to leave me a review. Come back next month. I gave you a link to next month's presentation as well.